Well, good evening. Nobody here said good evening back. Yeah, maybe you did. Maybe you did online, but I'm going to try that again. Good evening. It is so good to see you. We just have a handful here. I'm picking on them, but wonderful people. We are here with Pastor Jason Seevers. So excited, his wife Judy, and they are going to have an opportunity tonight to answer your questions. I've already received some, so if you have any other questions, those who are here are welcome. After they share an introduction and I share a few introductory thoughts, you are welcome to stand up and ask that question. If you're online, please feel welcome to ask your questions on our live comment thread there on our YouTube channel that you are watching. So I don't know why I just said that, but that you're watching. So please feel free to add your question there. We're off to a great start here. So if we, I'm excited to have them with us, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just share a few thoughts here for you about how we got here. Just a reminder, you know, the last few months feel like a few years. It just really does. 2020 in general feels like that. And so just kind of to recap how we got here looking for an associate pastor of youth and what that means. So last winter, towards the end of the winter, one of our deacons raised at our diaconate board meeting this idea. We talk about the spiritual condition of our church, we talk about strengths, we talk about areas that we could work harder to improve, how we can encourage the families in our churches to grow stronger, how we can encourage people to be more faithful in their service for the Lord Jesus Christ. And we were talking about that, and one of our deacons proposed the idea of adding a youth pastor and said, I just feel that this is a huge need. We have a need to reach those students in grades 6 through 12, to reach their families, to encourage them. The things that they face today, the challenges that they face are so unique, and they're different even than the ones we faced, very different. And it would be wonderful if we had a pastor who was able to come alongside them, to minister to their families, to minister to them. And so what we did as a diaconate board was we decided to pray about it for a month and see how we all felt about it. And so we did. And we came back a month later, and we unanimously felt strongly that this was the direction that the Lord was leading us. So we were so motivated by this desire to see the families in our church ministered to, especially that demographic that really we had not had the opportunity to reach as effectively as we have been able to reach little children and then adults. And so specifically that, we've thought that we could do something different. From there, we began to draft a list of responsibilities for this position that you can see on your screen, I believe, here in the lower corner, and now the whole thing. And so you can see the list of responsibilities there, and Tyler back there is doing such an awesome job, and Caitlin, so thank you so much. But we have the list of responsibilities there, and this is the job description, and our diaconate board worked hard on putting this together, praying over it, discussing it. Then we brought this motion before the church in a business meeting in March that our church would vote on creating the position of associate pastor of youth. And this measure passed overwhelmingly, and it was very encouraging. And so we created this position, but then we needed to look for a youth pastor. And so we established a search committee, and I've been blessed and humbled to be able to serve as the chairman of that board, and we began searching. And so we have been praying for our prospective youth pastor and his spouse. Throughout the last year, we've been looking through resumes and praying about that and reaching out. And we were so excited when we got Jason's resume, and so eager to talk to one another in our committee and watch the video that he had sent us, a demonstration of his teaching. And we were just so encouraged. And so we reached out to him and then got to connect with Judy as well. And wouldn't you know it, the COVID-19 happened. And so they were going to come at the end of March and candidate with us. And this would have happened months ago. But that happened, and it hindered us. And so we had to reschedule, and I know our search committee, we were so excited about the Seevers that we're praying so hard that with everything going on, of course, we wanted to protect our church family and them traveling, but we wanted to do the best we could to make sure that they didn't get away either without being able to come and candidate. So we were so excited to be here this weekend with them here with us. And so that kind of brings us up there. But as I share the list of the responsibilities for this position, just to share tonight for clarity's sake, as you're considering questions to ask, what kind of position we are creating. And I got a question about this today. I do want to emphasize that this is an associate pastor of youth. So he would establish a youth ministry, which would involve meeting with our youth on a weekly basis, remaining connected with them, developing good relationships with them, and their families. So this isn't just ministering to the youth, but also their families. We would work together. We have a common vision on ministry, having an integration between our ages and making sure that what we're communicating throughout the entire church, we're on the same page, and we have a common vision. And I know he'll have an opportunity to describe that. I'm excited about that. But that's what he is called to do. That's what the Lord has gifted him to do, and I know that that'll come through in our discussion today. And so ministering to youth and their families, predominantly grades 6 through 12. So I was asked today, will he be like a co-senior pastor? Will he be preaching? And now, when I'm on vacation, if he so chooses and feels led to preach, he'll certainly be welcome to. But but that is not his calling here. It will be to be a youth pastor. He also will not be a family pastor per se. Now, if the Lord opens up doors and gives him opportunities to minister in some other ways, but when he comes, he'll be ministering to our grades 6 through 12. So at this time, I am going to allow Jason and Judy to introduce themselves again to you, and then I'll be back up on stage with questions.
All right, well, as most of you have probably already seen my video and know my name already, I look forward to getting to know your names. It's Jason Seevers. This is my wonderful wife, Judy. We've been married just over a year now with a little one on the way, and we do not know the gender yet. We're waiting for a surprise. But a little bit about myself. I grew up in a Christian home. Went to church all the time. I was saved at 9-year-old, at age 9, and didn't really change too much until I reached my teen years, and that's when God really started getting a hold of me and walking through some pretty bad environments and situations that I found myself in, and he pulled me back towards him, and he led me towards going to Bible college at first just for 1 year as kind of a gap year before I decided what I actually wanted to do. And during that year, God got a hold of my heart more, especially when it comes to youth, because my home church lost our senior pastor, and our youth pastor kind of stepped up and left our youth group in a rough place. And during that time, I was like, I feel like God's leading me to go back and help. So I finished up my first year. I went back. I worked as a leader, just walking with the kids, working in youth group. I ran a Bible study with a small group of guys that were in the youth group, but God kept kind of pulling at my heart and letting me know that I wanted to do more than just what I was doing. And I got involved with Word of Life Fellowship, who have a pretty great camping and youth ministry up in Schroon Lake, New York, which I was connected with them for a while, but I became more connected with them, and they introduced me to an internship program that they started. And I went up there and I did another year at Bible college. And then I started the internship. The internship consisted of me being trained for about 3 months, where they just taught me everything that they could teach me on youth ministry. They went above and beyond in the training. And then after that short time, I went to a church in Utica, New York, and I worked as the intern youth pastor for the following 2 years. Up until this past, fall, which is when the internship ended, and I began looking for a new church. And we've been looking for pretty much since December of last year, trying to, find a good church and a good place to minister and grow ourselves and really grow with the family, a place that we could stay and have a great ministry and, really see kids grow closer to Christ and walk with parents and
Yeah, so I'm Judy. I was raised in Wisconsin. Have a big family of 11. But yeah, I was saved when I was 14. Started living for the Lord, or at least started working that way anyway. At age 19, and during that time, I went to Word of Life Bible Institute in upstate New York, and that was a huge turning point in my life, where God really used that to change my heart and make it more, become more Christ-like and pursue Him rather than what I wanted. And for Word of Life, during the summer, you get assigned a position for a summer camp. And I love children, so I just decided to apply for that, and I got it. And for the first year, and then also in the second year, I just realized that this was really what I wanted to do, was work with children and the families. So I felt like going to Lancaster Bible College in obviously Lancaster, and went for children and family ministries. And the more I was there and just learning about, different ways that I could, help children along with, being their advocate and also walking alongside parents and everything, the more I was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And, meeting Jason and just being able to work together with our different levels of education with what we're good at and stuff, just being able to work as a team and has been a huge blessing. So really excited to be able to do that. And I'm currently 34 weeks pregnant, so very excited for our little child too.
Okay, well, I don't have any comments yet, questions online, so I've already been handed some questions and had one, received one by text, one by email. Are you ready?
yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, all right. The first question I'll ask, and this really actually doesn't have much to do with youth ministry at all, but one that we got, and I think it's a good question. Are either of you musically inclined, or do you play an instrument?
I play guitar, and I also play the cajon, which is a box drum. I have not been blessed in that area. I was a part of a praise band during my teen years, but God's blessed me in other areas. So,
Okay. You like to sing?
she is an amazing singer.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. That was going to be my follow-up question. Well, I like to sing. Nobody else likes to hear it.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't even like hearing myself.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that's great. Our church, we have a pretty vibrant musical ministry and a great choir, and that's been on hold with everything going on, but eager to move forward there. So the next question was on the topic of evolution. So this is a topic that for many students is challenging, as you know, and they hear some of the claims made by contemporary science, and they feel like maybe their belief system or the system they grew up in is not logical. It's not a reasonable faith, and they wrestle with their faith. And probably no topic has led to Christian youth questioning their faith as much in most generations as that topic. So how do you feel about that topic?
Evolution is a really tough subject because it's one of the subjects that's, it's backed by science. So people take it as fact, ignoring the fact that science has been wrong before and continues to have faults with it. For myself, I believe in a literal translation of the Bible. I believe when the Bible says that God created the world in a literal 7 days, 24-hour period, I believe that's accurate. I believe we serve an amazing God that can do that. And I believe that, when it comes to especially teenagers and dealing with this issue, it can be really tough. And I've met a couple of students who have questions about it. They struggle with it because this is what they're being taught in school. This is most public schools won't even accept a creation-ish point of view. So it's definitely a challenging subject, but teaching on it and showing them that, God can create something with even the appearance of age, but even just creating everything as it is. He is that powerful. He is that sovereign. And when you take away that beginning section, I'm a big fan of Answers in Genesis and their ministry, and I think they put it really great that when you take away that foundation, the very beginning of the book, you just lose so much ground. So I'm definitely 100% creationist. And
Wonderful. Okay. So a young earth creationist believes that the world was created with the appearance of age.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Well, moving on, our questions here. Just about the youth group itself, when you gather together to meet in your weekly meeting, I was asked for you to describe your vision of the weekly youth group time. So what does that look like when our youth gather together?
Well, in youth group, you really want 3 things. You want them to be learning. You want them to be growing. So not just learning about the Bible, but you want them to be growing and applying it. And lastly, you want them to be showing it. So Successful Youth Ministry should have all 3. There should be a place where they learn about God and they can apply what they learn to their lives, and then they go on to show that in their life and bearing fruit and all that. The way I love doing youth ministry and my program that I would set up here is, first off, first thing when teenagers get here, have something fun, have a game, have something that just lets them know that, hey, this is a fun, safe place for them to relax away from the struggles of school and the stress of homework and all that. Give them a safe place to be teenagers and have some fun. Then follow that up with some worship, and follow that up with some learning, devotions, lessons, and then moving into small groups. And I love small groups because it gives the time for myself and the other leaders within a youth group to sit down with teenagers. And this is really when the growing aspect takes place. And you can talk with them about, okay, this is a lesson that we just talked about. How do we apply it? How do we implement the things that we've learned about and talked about, and also just build relationships with them and be role models and connect with them. And then lastly, you want to be integrating them into how things are work. You want them to be actively not just showing the faith within the youth group, but how can they witness to their friends? How can they be inviting their friends to church? How can they be active in church? How they can be serving within the youth group and also within the church as a whole.
Wonderful. I wanted to ask Tyler, am I still on? Oh, okay. If you can hear me. Okay. Well, that's not good.
There it comes.
Okay. Well, before we continue with our questions here, online and ones that have already been submitted to me, does anybody here have any questions that you'd like to ask? Okay, we'll continue on.
Oh, yep.
Advice would you young people going into college who have to face so many liberal professors?
My very first word of advice, and this is for students and parents alike, is find a good local church. So oftentimes we like to send our kids off to the best colleges and have the best everyone have UVs, but yet we just forget that we need to find a good local church for them to go to. So my first advice is find a good local church that will support you, that will be there with you, that you can build relationships there, to find people that you can trust, so that when you do are faced with these tough questions, and those we're all going to get faced with them at some point, when they come to you and you have to find an answer to them, you can go to the people that you trust, and more importantly, you can just go straight to the Bible and find the answers for yourself. So
Okay. So solid biblical foundation and a good church. Amen. Okay. And I don't know if you could hear that question. I will repeat the question from the congregation, just for those watching online. The question was, how do you prepare a student who's going off to college, knowing that they are going to have many professors who have a certain political slant there and might try to undermine their faith, Christian practice? And so that was the answer that was given. We had another question.
Getting things started. Had a several-month break.
yeah, if Lord wills, this is where He calls us, and this is where we agree that God's calling us, then we will probably be coming early to mid-September once the baby comes, and as long as everything works out there. As far as getting started, well, one of the main things would be just getting to know people, building relationships, getting connections, and then especially with youth group and getting it started. I mean, we had a youth event early today that was pretty good, and we had started 6 kids here. I know before from talking with Katie that she would usually average 10 to 12, which is an amazing start. So really, one of my main goals would be starting that, helping organize it, shape it, bringing in help leaders, more people who can help disciple kids and walk with these students and disciple them. And it won't be an instant success as any ministry is, but taking it day by day and building the relationships that will eventually last.
Okay. I'm going to share one that just came in through text. How has your experiences in life prepared you to deal with the issues teens face today? Peer pressure, bullying, cyberbullying, drugs, etc.
That's a tough question, mainly because, especially with the kids, this generation that's coming up here, they're facing something that I didn't even face when I was growing up. I mean, we dealt with some things, but with all the school shootings, the major pushes and stuff that have been changing our culture. But for myself, when I grew up, you may have noticed I have a speech impediment. Most people just comes off as an accent by now, but I was bullied because of that. I was picked on a lot, not even by kids who I went to school with, because I was homeschooled. I was picked on by kids who were in my church, and that was something I had to deal with. Through that, I dealt with some depression through that. I dealt with a lot of the other issues and making the wrong friends, being heavily addicted to just the internet in general and all the awful things that can come from that. I'm pretty well experienced, but when it really comes down to it, I'm not just here to walk with your students and to, help them deal with it. I'm also here to help you as parents and help you deal with it, and help you, be able to best disciple your students and deal with this crazy world that they're living in.
Amen. Amen. Okay. And what we found, and I know our search committee has been so impressed, is as we've asked questions from Jason about some of the difficult topics that youth are faced with today, some of the social issues, contemporary issues, the way he's answered so calmly, clearly, That's a great encouragement. So, next question here for you is, what makes you, or what initially even made you interested in our church?
Well, we've been looking we started looking last beginning of winter, and we checked out a few churches, and we've had a few churches that were interested in us. But really, one of the things that we were looking for is we were looking for a place that we could begin a ministry and grow it and walk with it, and find not just a church that we could have a ministry in, but a church that was a loving family of believers. We both come from great churches, and the church I walked in for 2 years was an amazing church, and we were looking for a great community that would not just allow us to grow our own ministries, but would also push us to grow ourselves and better ourselves, and really a church that we could grow with. And when initially I was sending out applications to a lot of churches, and I heard back from Pastor Chris, and I started looking over the questionnaire that you guys sent. And out of all the questionnaires I had received, I think that was the one that had covered the most diverse issues in the best questions. And I could just tell right off the bat that they had thought out what they were looking for, and they knew what they were looking for, and I agreed with everything that the church stood for. And that kind of leads in little steps, and everything that was pointing here. So.
And now, you might not be aware of the questionnaire that he referenced there. Our search committee had worked really hard to put together a list of questions that we wanted to ask up front of candidates. And we saw that as really as being a two-prong approach. And the first was that it would help us to understand what a prospective youth minister would be like. We'd understand their values, his values and beliefs. So we asked theological questions. We asked social issues, the topic of homosexuality and other issues related to human sexuality. Do you believe that the Bible is inerrant? Do you believe it is authoritative? So we asked questions like that. So everybody in our search committee came up with a few questions, and we put this together. So that was one part of it. But the other part is we viewed it as a screening tool. We were hoping that somebody who would come across that and did not agree with our values, not just our values, but what the Bible clearly teaches, then they would just not take the time to submit that information, and that would save all parties time. And you might say, well, all pastors agree that the Bible is the Word of God, and that would be a serious misunderstanding of reality, unfortunately, and even on topics, of course, like human sexuality. And so we did ask those questions, and again, as it submitted, it's just really encouraging and aligned with the beliefs and values of what the Bible teaches, as well as what our church maintains. So that's what he was referencing. Now, you and I both share, unfortunately, a common experience, and that is that we both backslid as teenagers. Now, we're not the only two people in America that have gone through that. And so, many teenagers backslide. They go through a period of time where they're not living lives that glorify Christ, and they make bad decisions. Just a two-point question there, and one is, what do you think is the greatest obstacle? And I know that there's a lot of options there, but what do you think is one of the greatest obstacles students face today? And I know it's impossible to keep anybody from backsliding. I mean, that's just the reality. We have free will. But what can you do in youth ministry to hopefully encourage students from going through that, or maybe even to shorten that time period if somebody does unfortunately make those decisions?
Can you repeat the first question again?
Sorry, the first question. That was like a college essay type of question in 3,000 words. Greatest obstacle students face today?
There are a lot of difficult struggles that students face today. I think the main one is just the fact that they have access to everything through the internet and through that's a great thing, being able to, have access to finances, but oftentimes you can find the wrong answers, and you can meet people who disagree with you, who will challenge what you believe, and that's really where you come down to, finding kids who are backslidden. And that's not the only things. Oftentimes we find with a lot of the parents of students who have backslidden, oftentimes what you more often see is you see that they themselves were not very committed to their faith. And I shared a story already today with at lunch that I went over with my mother one day to talk with another mother of a couple of teenagers that I grew up with, and these couple of boys who are about my age haven't really been in church since they graduated. And she asked my mom, what did you do differently with your kids that, most of them are still going to church? My mom didn't really have, a very good answer at the time, but after thinking it over, it was her commitment to her faith that helped us. Seeing those couple of kids and a lot of the other kids who I grew up with who have left the church when they grew up, sports took priority over church. Showing animals for 4-H, and pretty much anytime you as a parent or any parent, says this is more important than going to church, you're really saying this is more important than God. And that's teaching them that church is something that you go to when you don't have anything, when there's time and when you have nothing else going on. And I think that's also a very difficult struggle, and especially with kids who grow up without godly parents who don't care about them going to church and don't care about anything like that. And I think this leads into the next question of how do you stop that? How do you stop kids from backsliding? And really the way to do it is you have to have them have their faith be their own faith. It's not something that their parents do. It's not something that,
We will return to Jason answering that question. Oh, yeah. Why don't I do that? There you go.
Where was I? Yes. With a lot of my generation especially, and probably the generation immediately before me, we grew up going to church because our parents forced us to, which is a good thing. It's a good thing to make your children go, but it's also important to show that it's important to go, and that you don't just have to go because you have to go. You have to go because it's important, and you have to. They have to have their faith their own. It can't be something. I mean, they're not saved based on their parents. They're not saved based on their grandparents. It's really their personal relationship with God that's going to hold them through. With some of the students that I've seen who, there was one student at the church I walked with. He was probably one of the godliest young men I've ever met, and I watched him graduate. And with him, he had great godly parents. He had, all these great things. But the thing that really helped him, and the thing that was the reason why he didn't backslide, was the fact that he loved God. It was his relationship with him. It wasn't, it was what his parents did. It was the fact that he generally wanted to go to church. He generally wanted to, grow in his faith and to continue to be discipled. And that's it's probably the only way you'll ever going to see kids not backslide, is if they are the ones who are actively trying to do it on their own and actively growing. It's really the goal is to have them have their own personal relationships, not just what their parents do.
In hearing that, I'm going to actually add on to that question. So there's parts of a question there. But so with that, you talked about godly parents who, now that doesn't mean that their students won't backslide, but when they do, having that example can really encourage them and help provide guidance. So, what kind of encouragement on top of that? Like, what kind of encouragement should parents have right now if they have youth that are doubting the faith, or they have students, they have children who are backsliding? What kind of encouragement would you offer to them?
I would say the student who is questioning their faith is never a bad thing. We all have doubts. That's not a abnormal thing, and treating it as an abnormal thing is wrong, because I know for myself, when I was a teenager, I had doubts about my faith. Faith is not an easy thing. And for them to question it and for them to be thinking through it, it shows that they are maturing. They are, seeking to understand. And as a parent, hopefully you have this kind of relationship with your student where you can, help guide them through these questions and help guide them through, what they're thinking and the debates. And if you don't have that relationship with your student, then you can start making the steps to have that relationship and start building that relationship to really help them. What was the second part of that?
That was good. Good, thank you. We had a question come through, and this is a little bit of a break from some of the ministry questions, but this came through on YouTube, and it is, what do you and Judy like to do for recreation?
We love board games. We love hiking. We love just spending time together, spending time as friends, going out on dates and doing goofy things and silly things. We're both pretty interesting characters. My wife is more of a character. I'm more reserved than she is, but that's why I married her, because she brings out my goofiness more than I am by myself. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, there's nowhere to hike around here, so
no.
you know.
So you didn't point out every other trail while we were driving around today.
Yeah, there's a good bit here. Okay, as you look around at the culture in which we live, and churches in general, and I know churches might wonder, not just ours, but churches in general, why is there a need for youth ministry? Why is there a need for youth pastors? What do you think youth pastors can do that is unique, that can help students as they go through this particular area of life?
I would say that, if we lived in a perfect world, we wouldn't need youth pastors, but we wouldn't need pastors either. But we don't. We live in a very sinful, very fallen world, and because of that, it's difficult. Parenting is very difficult. We are about to become parents. I am terrified because of that, but I'm so excited at the same time, and I'm so excited to have that experience, because it is really a God-given experience, and it's made difficult because we live in a fallen world. I'm blanking on the rest of your question. Repeat it.
Yeah, it was about.
Oh, yes. But because we live in a fallen world, the teenage years are a really interesting time, and the term teenager is a rather new word, and what it really is that transition between being a child and being a grown up, being mature, and as the role of a youth pastor is really that of a coach. We have coaches for softball, baseball, football, and the coaches are there and they meet with students on for high school teams, and they help them practice. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be a matter of if the parents are bringing them to practice. It's going to be a matter on if the parents are having them practice at home, and the coach is there to not just aid and come alongside the students and help them, but really to come alongside the parents as well. Because again, they're growing up in a world that's so much different than the world that I grew up in just 10 years ago, let alone 20, 30, 50 years ago. It's difficult, and they're being forced to think about things and look at things that a lot of us didn't even think or worry about. Just with everything going on now, but even before that, there were so many school shootings, and students see that. They see the news, and they go, What if that happened at my school? Schools up their security. Students notice that. They ask questions. And really, as a youth pastor, my goal is to be there, be able to come alongside of them, to have relationship with them, and to encourage them and build them up and come alongside their parents as well.
Okay. Does anybody here have any questions?
Rural we are. I don't think you came from a rural area, did you?
I grew up 25 minutes away from the closest Walmart. It's a lot hillier here. I'm from right off of Lake Ontario, so it's a bit flat. Not super flat like where she's from, but no, I love the country. I love the environment. It's great.
That question was whether or not they came from a more rural community like ours.
Possibilities for employment.
The question there was, knowing that this is a part-time position, what other opportunities or vocations will you pursue?
Well, at the moment, the job I've been doing is I drive for Uber, which is a very interesting job, and I get to meet a lot of interesting people, and I love it. It's a great time, so that's always a possibility for me to continue doing part-time, and whether or not that's local or not, that might be difficult, but I've worked in food industry, I've worked in a couple other industries, and coming along and finding a part-time job shouldn't be too difficult.
Anybody else with any questions? That question was, how would you respond to some people who say that churches can come across as judgmental?
That's an interesting question, because when I hear that and when someone tells me that, that tells me that they've had an experience where they went to a church that was judgmental. Whether or not it was as bad as they make it out to be, oftentimes, you have to hear all sides of the story to really see what the actual picture is. But when it comes to that, I mean, it really comes down to just building relationship with them. When their perspective is, church is a judgmental place, but then when you come alongside of them as a friend and they see, oh, you're a Christian, but yet you're not judgmental, that's where you can kind of build relationships and ultimately, hopefully lead them to Christ and lead them to his love.
Yeah. Any others? Okay, well, I'm going to ask one final question, and then I'm going to allow you to say anything else you'd like, and I'll ask you to close with some prayer. So this question is just kind of looking at, you've described a good bit today about what a youth ministry should look like, why there's a need for that, what our culture looks like, which obviously is important. But so how would you describe your philosophy of ministry? What's the goal of youth ministry?
Well, our philosophy of youth ministry, which I believe we brought up in the video, but it's to bring glory to God through coming alongside students, discipling them, helping them grow, and coming alongside their parents and helping them disciple your students. So really, when it comes down to it, it's ultimately our whole lives about bringing glory to God, and secondly to that, it's about coming alongside parents, because God's blessed you with these students, and I'm there to aid you in what God's given you to do, and I'll be there, and I'll be a coach and an encouragement, and especially for those students who don't have a good godly parents at home and are coming from rough homes and difficult homes. That's really the moments where you step in and show them what a godly set of parents should look like, and what Christianity is all about, and showing them love and being with them.
Wonderful. Well, I lied. I did have one more question I
Okay.
forgot about. And it's a tough one, though. It's a tough one.
Okay.
But it's a really important one, okay? So you might need to take an extra breath. But are you good at softball?
I played softball. My church has a softball league. When I started playing, my first year playing was when I was 14. And then I was not good. The following summer, I started working summers at a camp, so I didn't play much. But I would practice with them before I left. And a couple years later, my youth pastor was like, "Why are you leaving? Can you just stay and play with us?" And because, I'm not that good, but I enjoy it, and I'm a good runner, and I'm a good outfielder. And then my very last year playing, which was 2 years ago now, I actually was one of the coaches for our team because my church had 3 different teams, and I coached one of them, and I love that. And yeah, so I'm not very good, but I'll play, and I enjoy it.
Wonderful. Well, that was the last question that I had for you there. But I did want to give you the floor. If you had anything else that you wanted to share, anything that you thought was important for our congregation to know about you that hasn't been discussed here, there might not be anything, but anything that you would have.
No, off the top of my head, I would like to just thank for the opportunity to come down and candidate, and I've enjoyed getting to know Pastor Chris over the last few months with phone calls, texting, and even if it's a lot later than what we wanted at first. Everything happens in God's timing, and I've enjoyed meeting the few of you that I've met so far, and I'm looking forward to getting to know more of you. And it's been a joy here, and me and Judy have both enjoyed our time and love it. So
Wonderful. Okay, and before Pastor Jason closes us in a word of prayer, just a reminder that tomorrow we will have our business meeting following the morning worship service. And so we will be voting on Jason as our candidate, Pastor Jason. And so there are multiple ways to vote. If you need to vote by paper, please let me know, and I will make sure that you have a ballot, and I'm going to collect those following the meeting. We will be sending out an email with a link in the morning, and that will have a question on it. It's only one question, and that's our ballot. And so if you could submit that sometime during the service, we're not going to air on YouTube our business meeting there following the service. So you'll have about 15 minutes after the service there. If you could submit your question, that would be, or your ballot rather, that would be wonderful. So you could vote those 2 ways, or you could be here in person. If it is safe for you to be here and you're able to be here, we encourage those to come out and participate in the business meeting. So with that, I'm going to ask Pastor Jason to close us in a word of prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for just your love and your sovereignty. I thank you so much for the fact that even in this crazy world that we're living in now, with everything going on, we can have faith that you're still in control. And I thank you for the knowledge and the fact that, whatever happens, if this is your will, if this isn't your will, that you will make it known to us. I pray for your wisdom and your guidance. And I just pray that you bless this church, no matter what happens. I pray that you continue to bless Pastor Chris and the congregation here, that they can continue to be a light on top of the mountain, to seek to love those who are around them, and to see more and more of your love shown through their lives to reach those around us. I just pray that you bless us this evening. I pray that you bless those who are here to make it home safe, and just give us a great and amazing night, Lord. I pray all this in your great name. Amen.
God bless you.